Brutality is the form of nature, raw and unrefined, terrible in its awesome power, and these creatures full of it pecked at her face with ferocious vigor. Alvin watched from behind a tree as splashes of red covered their bony heads. The human bodies that carried them, dressed in black suits and ties, added a surreal quality to the gruesome scene he could scarcely believe. The 5 creatures kept at it until the screaming turned to muffled gurgles, belching from the twitching body of Alvin's wife. Tears streamed from his eyes. "Elaine." A crow squawked atop the limb above, the sound deafening in the quiet woods. He looked up, tried to wish it away, but it screeched again and again as if calling to its brethren, alerting them to his presence. His lungs halted, and he held them as long as possible. He strained against their natural urge to suck air, pursed his lips, and pinned his nose shut with 2 fingers. For the inevitable, he waited. The group of strange beings would surely converge on him and rip him to shreds as they had poor Ellie. In a way, he hoped they would. If heaven existed, he'd see her there and they would be together again. When nothing happened, curiosity forced him to peek around the trunk. They continued to stab her body with knife-like beaks. The whole of their skulls had reddened and dripped with fresh blood. He glimpsed the dark annular sockets where eyes should have been, but no organic matter existed within, only voids which could be seen but not see. The crow took flight and passed over the 5 beasts finishing their meal. It cawed once as it went by. They all stood at once, rigid and perfectly upright. Rivulets of red ran down their beaks and steadily dripped to the earth at their feet. They raised their arms as if to fly, but only stood still. Their beaks opened to expose pointed teeth, and together they lunged downward and finished their meal. A crimson geyser rained down and soaked their pristine suits. Alvin's jaw tightened as he stifled cries of guilt. "I should have helped her. I should have at least tried." The orchestra of gorging flesh stopped. The forest went silent. Not even nocturnal insects sang. Alvin heard terror pumping through every vein. It pressed at his temples, the pressure building like a vice about to crush his skull. The pain of brutal death instilled deep terror, willed his survival instinct to preserve his life. If not for that most primal part of mind, he would have walked out from his place of hiding and went willingly into the circle of chimeric beings. Instead, he turned and ran through the brush, forcing his way through bushes of thorns, jumping over fallen branches, dodging trees left and right. He carried himself as he never had before. His shoes grew feathers, and the wind whisked his feet forward with every desperate step. Hope rose inside. Hope that he might get away, that the death behind would not catch up, and he'd see the sun again. A blinding amber light burst into the sky ahead, but not the sun he'd hoped for. It rained like fire on the forest floor as he covered his eyes against the pane. With it came a terrible heat that threatened to singe the hair from his forearms. He crouched and tried to shield himself. Footsteps halted inches away from his fetal position. Death had arrived. He looked up to see the uncanny birdmen ablaze in the torrid light. The blood that covered them burned like fire. They'd become as the phoenix, all fury and power. The brightness blinked out, casting the forest back into the shadow empty space brings to the night. All went quiet except for the breath of the creatures standing over him. They stabbed repeatedly as he writhed on the ground. His view of the white moon turned to blood, and the night darkened. Time slowed, and as his consciousness faded, he saw inside the empty, non-existent eyes of his tormentors. Inside he saw her, curled into a mangled ball that was once her beautiful form. All around her were strangers in similar position. Elaine, forgive me. I'll see you soon.